Welcome to Part C. As great as these Sega titles were, a console cannot survive on first-party games alone, and so the real success of the machine came about by the third-party developers, who had been shunned at the Nintendo party or didn't believe in the stringent control that Nintendo held over its third-party developers, and saw Sega offering it a different, more open path. The first third-party game to mention is Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse, released in 1990 and developed by Capcom. This game was a rare thing, being a licensed game that was actually a really good platformer as well. But for many, the greatest licensed game released on the Mega Drive has to be Alien 3, released in 1993. Realising a brilliantly playable rescue run-and-gun game that kept all the tension and atmosphere of the original films, even if the third Alien film didn't actually have any guns in it. Codemasters would bring across their smash hit on the NES called Micro Machines onto the Mega Drive in 1993. This would offer great overhead racing made even more interesting with the makeshift tracks built up from everyday objects, just as we used to do it with toy cars as kids. The sequel in 1994 was even better, offering an additional 2 game ports built into the cart, and so allowing up to 4-player racing mayhem. But of course, the most important of these publishers to join Sega was Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts was founded by William M. Hawkins III, better known as Trip Hawkins. At the age of 29, Trip had already had a successful working career, reaching the enviable position of Director of Strategy and Marketing at Apple. But by 1982, enthused by the success of Activision and others in the world of game publishing, he decided to create his own company, and he called it Electronic Arts. The initial ideals of the company was to evolve the medium of games further, and to handle the game designers and the box designs as you would in the music industry, with a developer promotion and eye-catching record cover style box designs. The initial games as well were all original classics, such as Archon, a great chess-like strategy game. There was Mule, a great intergalactic strategy game of trading. Electronic Arts would also make other innovations, such as Julius Erving and Larry Bird Go One-on-One, released in 1983. This was the first licensed game ever released by Electronic Arts, and in fact it was the second licensed game ever released, with only Pele Soccer, released on Atari, hipping it to the post a couple of years earlier. Electronic Arts would continue over these years, making a successful name for itself in the world of home computers. Such important classics as The Bard Tale, Mail Order Monsters in 1985 would also pass through its doors, sealing Electronic Arts as a game publisher which pushed the boundaries of gaming. Trip also kept the workplace relaxed over this time, with big beer parties on the weekend and issuing out Nerf guns to all the employees, so if they got stressed they could start shooting Nerf balls and even having a Nerf ball fight. Despite the success that Electronic Arts had enjoyed in the home computer market, they had yet the opportunity to enter the lucrative console market, with the terms set by Nintendo too high a risk for Trip to accept. So when the Mega Drive first came along, Trip saw this new console as a way into the console market, but on his terms. The first thing that Electronic Arts did was reverse engineer the security chip that Sega used. Once this was achieved, they could manufacture their own cartridges without the Sega chip. He was ready to go into negotiations with Sega, basically telling them that they would release their cartridges totally unlicensed without Sega seeing a penny, and they would fight them in court, or Sega would offer Electronic Arts favourable terms and they would license their games officially. Sega decided to go for the latter option, which would turn out to be the key decision in Sega's machine being a success. Electronic Arts would quickly release game after game for the machine and give the Sega catalogue a much needed boost in the number of sales. Also, Electronic Arts would give games over a wide selection of genres, giving gamers that much needed choice over the simple arcade action ports that Sega were churning out. But it would be in 1990, with their release of John Madden Football, that would be the game that first won over the American non-gamers to the Sega camp. With the American football great himself on the cover and the unsurpassed graphics and in-game realism, it won over the casual market who just wanted to play virtual ball with their mates over a can of beer. It's interesting that Electronic Arts had previously tried to gain the John Madden license in 1986 on the Apple II, but when John Madden saw that it was only 7 aside, he refused to put his name on the product, saying that's not football. It would take Trip until 1989 before they got a working American football game which Mr. Madden was willing to put his name to. But this attention to detail on an official NFL licensed product would make a huge hit and be the keystone into which Trip would build Electronic Arts as we know it today, releasing licensed sports games such as NHL Hockey and PGA Golf in 1991 and FIFA International Soccer, first released in 1993. And of course there was NBA Showdown. Electronic Arts would continue to capitalise on these licenses, with annually released versions of the game, each marginally improving the game and ensuring all the players and teams were up to date for the new season. Of course, Electronic Arts would be known for their action games as well, with these being some of the fondest franchises on the machine. First, we have the biker game Road Rash, released in 1991, which took all the thrills of games such as Super Hang-On but mixed it with the no-holds-barred underground motorbike racing scene that allowed you to play dirty if you wanted to, winning races with your fists. It was a great game, universally loved by all, but it could have turned out a lot different. Back in 1989, Carl May was one of the many game developers laid off at Epix, as they began the decline with the failure of the portable console, the Atari Lynx. Carl now found himself working at EA and asked to work on creating a banking road effect on the NASCAR game called Andretti Racing for the NES. Carl quickly found that NES simply couldn't cope with the banking, but on the Mega Drive he managed to get a great smooth road effect working that could bank in different directions. The technical wizardry that Carl had produced was impressive, but now they would need a game to utilise this great effect. Enter co-creator Randall Breen, or Randy, who came up with the idea of doing a licensed American Motorcycle Association game that had you drive anywhere meeting up in road cafes. The team feverishly worked on a demo to show their concept, but it was soon clear that a sedate driving game where you had to worry about speed limits was not going to make a great game, and it secretly became known by the team as Randy's Sunday driving game behind his back. The game was trialled at the Computer Exhibition Show, where it bombed. Carl begged Electronic Arts to be given 6 more months to sort it out, and he be given the reins to change the game design as opposed to Randy. With Carl at the helm, he added the violence, the underground racing elements, turning the game into an underground bike racer instead. The result was released in spring of 1991 to critical success. A sequel, seen by many as the best in the series, would follow in July 1993, offering more of the same, but this time allowing you to play 2 players at the same time with a split screen. A third game called Road Rash 3 Tour de Force was also released on the Mega Drive in 1995, but with digitised graphics as opposed to the original cartoon-like graphics, it lost a lot of its charm. Another EA hit franchise would also begin on the Mega Drive with the game called Desert Strike Return to the Gulf, released in February 1992. It all started when Mike Hosen, whose company had been acquired by Electronics all the way back in 1980 for their personal information manager called Go, or Get Organised. Now, a decade on, in 1990, EA mostly concentrated on games now, and so Trip Hawkins asked Mike to write a game based on Choplifter, as he thought the idea of flying a helicopter and rescuing people was a great concept for a game. Mike set about giving it a unique isometric viewpoint, and also you could play the missions in a non-linear manner and blow anything up. Concepts concepts now that we gamers don't really think about, but back in 1992 these were thrilling concepts. Also, being released after the First Gulf War, the Middle Eastern setting was really topical and exciting. The following year, in 1993, a sequel called Jungle Strike was released, which was more of the same, but this time it was set in a rainforest South American setting. Finally, on the Mega Drive there was Urban Strike, which again was more of the same, but with fiddly elements, where your pilot could also leave the helicopter and go around the city on foot. That's the end of Part C. Please go on to Part D.